In today's video, we are going to talk about why arrows go where they go on the target. The first thing I would recommend to you is if you're shooting great groups and you always just have one arrow going out of the mix, I would mark that arrow separate, put it in your quiver, don't look and see which one it is, shoot another group. If it's the same arrow every time going out, well, it's probably going to be something more with your arrow. But if you've already done that and you've decided that it's not your arrows, your equipment's fine, and there's just something about your form that's making an arrow go either high, low, left, or right on a consistent basis, this will be the perfect video for you today. I'm going to go over each area on the target of why your arrows might be hitting in that spot, and hopefully we can eliminate those bad shots for you today. So first, let's talk about why are my arrows going high on the target. If by accident on one shot, you lean back with the shot, as you can see, it's starting to change the angle of where my bow is. And as your body leans back, the bow starts to tilt up and your arrow is at a different direction now. So always make sure that when you're shooting, you're keeping your body nice and straight in that T position and leaning forward towards the target. A second reason why your arrows might go high compared to the other arrows in the target is because you're pulling the string back too far. Always remember that anchor point is really important in archery. So let's say all your shots were at the corner of the smile, and then one shot you pull all the way back here to your ear. So this is your anchor. And on the next shot, you come all the way back here. You're putting a lot more power in the string, so it's gonna shoot higher on the target. So not only can your arrows go higher if you pull the string back further, so you change your anchor by coming back further on your face, but arrows can also go higher on the target if you change your anchor lower on your face. So just watch where my bow arm is and how that changes. So normally my anchor's here, but watch how everything shifts as you change your anchor position. You see that versus that. A third reason why your arrows may shoot high compared to the other arrows in your target is you might be pushing into the grip, healing the bow. Watch at the end of the shot as I release. See the extra push to the target? They think that they're helping the arrow get to the target. Instead, the arrow shoots high. So make sure when you shoot, you always want to keep that bow arm nice and still. And make sure you're not healing the grip, pushing your arm forward to get the arrow down to the target. When you shoot archery, I always tell archers to keep the elbow nice and straight. Some elbows, some shoulders are a little different, so you might be up a little bit higher. But you always want to make sure that you don't bring your elbow down here. This is going to change the angle of how your fingers are on the string, which could cause high arrows. So watch here. Hard for me to even do. Okay, this could change the angle to come up here if your elbow's down lower than if you keep it up and you're in this position. You always stay in that letter T position, because changing this angle, changing that angle when you're shooting from shot to shot is going to change the angle in which your arrow flies out of the bow. This one is one that I talk about in a lot of my videos. And a lot of people have their own opinion if they like to go split finger, 3 under, and it doesn't matter. You can choose whatever way is more comfortable for you. The key is just to be consistent and make sure you do the same thing every time. So I personally teach beginners 3 fingers under for a various number of reasons. So if you have 3 fingers under and you shoot your group and you're grouping pretty well, and then you shoot an arrow and it goes high, it could be changing your finger position on the string can make you shoot higher or lower arrows. So 3 fingers under to split finger, you're going to get a higher shot, which is going to give you a higher arrow on the target. The final reason why an arrow might be going high on your target is where you are loading your arrow onto the string. So when you get a bow, typically your coach will set the knocking point on the string. So that way, every time you load it, you're going to be loading your arrow just below the knocking point. Now, let's say you shoot a great group and then you have one that goes high and you've checked all the other things we've talked about today. Make sure you're also checking, did you load the arrow, the knock, right under the metal piece? Because even if you leave a little bit of a gap, let's put it against the blue so you can see better. or even down here, do you see how that's changing the angle of the arrow, and the arrow is coming out higher? So make sure your arrow's not down here or even right here, but it's right under the metal piece. A really big one, especially for me growing up as a shooter, was hitting my arm. So my arm just naturally likes to stick out. I have to remember on every shot, as part of my shot process, to rotate my arm in to make sure I don't have any issues and I have great clearance. For beginners, a lot of times it's hard to remember that step of remembering to turn your bow arm in. This will cause your arrows to go low. And the reason why is because when you release the string comes forward, and as it hits the arm, sometimes it will catch on to your arm guard, or it will even hit the arm guard, which slows down the string. So when the arrow takes off from the string, the arrow is already going at a slower speed, and the arrow that was coming out nice and fast is now caught, and it loses its power, and you're gonna shoot low shots on the target. So always remember, turn that arm in, keep the arm out of the way. If you have baggy clothes on, put the arm guard on over top to keep everything nice and tight on the body. So that way, string interference isn't one of the reasons why you shoot low on the target. Another reason why arrows will shoot low on the target is dropping the bow arm. So when you shoot archery, you should come right back, keep the bow arm up. Unfortunately, when archers shoot, sometimes they will drop the bow arm. For a couple of different reasons. One, I think they feel like the shot is already done. So as soon as they let go of the arrow, they're already moving on, getting the next arrow, and they haven't followed through with the whole shot. So they've let down too soon. Some do it because they're looking to see where the arrow hit on the target. So they're up here, and then as soon as they shoot, they want to see where did the arrow hit, and they drop the bow arm. You have to remember, as a beginner archer, to keep everything in that letter T position until the arrow hits the target. Set up, pull back, 1,000, 2, 1,000, release, arrow hits the target, then you can let everything down. The shot is over. You're not gonna have any interference from your form, dropping the bow arm, to make your arrow go in another direction. A really simple fix is, if you have an arrow that goes low, just make sure you're knocking your arrow correctly. I always teach archers to knock the arrow under the knocking point. When you're shooting, let's say you have a great group on the target, you knocked all your arrows properly, and on the last shot, let's just say you forgot and you knocked your arrow above. As you can already see, the higher up you go, the lower the arrows. So that's why the knocking point is so important, because it's going to tell you where to line up, so that way it's coming out straight each time. Another reason why beginners will shoot arrows low on the target is because they are not getting the full setup in their shot. And I see this happen a lot of times with beginners, is instead of extending their arm and having a nice solid bow arm, they have a bend in their arm because they're nervous to hit their arm when they're shooting, or maybe they've just hit their arm and now they're trying to keep it out of the way. So when their arm is collapsed, you get a lot less. See how you get all this power here? But when you have your arm collapsed, you're gonna start to lose power in your shot. Everything's gonna be, the more the bent the arm is, the less power, the less strength in the arm. And a lot of times you're gonna see that your arrows are gonna go lower on the target. The final reason why your arrows might be going low is you are not pulling the string back far enough. So we just talked about how you have a collapsed bow arm. You don't have that strong, solid bow arm, and how that can make you lose power in the string. Same thing on the back side. If you're not setting it up and pulling back all the way, then you can also get a low shot. So typically you're supposed to pull all the way back to the corner of the smile, but sometimes beginners, they'll only come back halfway. Maybe they're nervous to touch their face, or they're nervous to get the shot off or get the string too close. So they'll pull back about halfway and then they'll shoot the shot. Now, luckily, I'm only like 5 yards from the target, so mine just went in the yellow anyway. But typically, if you're shooting a longer range, 10 yards, even beyond, anytime you don't get that full shot, you're gonna be shooting low on the target. The number one reason that stands out in my mind is where you're anchoring on your face. And I've talked about this in a few other videos. Make sure when you shoot, line up really close to the face, and that'll line you up really well. Because if you're out here, because you're too nervous to get too close to your face, then you're off to this direction, shooting a left shot. Sometimes when you shoot arrows off to the left, it could be something as simple as closing the wrong eye. When you're shooting archery, it's okay to keep both eyes open, especially if you're the same hand dominance as eye dominance. If you are shooting cross dominant, so for me, example, I am right-handed but left eye dominant. So I like to close my left eye when I shoot. Pulling back with the right hand means you want to aim with the right eye. If you're pulling back your bow with the left hand, that means you want to aim with the left eye, if you're going to choose to close an eye. So what would be correct is if I pull back, I set up, pull back, my left eye stays shut because I'm pulling back with the right hand, so I want to aim with the right hand, the right eye. All right, so that one went in the yellow. Now, if I go to shoot this one and I don't know better, let's say I'm thinking, I'm right-handed, but I am left eye dominant. So I think I'm just gonna go ahead and aim with my left eye because that's the more dominant eye. So I'll go ahead and set up, close the other eye. Just don't wanna miss the target here. Okay, good thing I'm close, I'm not too far off. The further back you go, you'll be further off. But if you notice, my first shot was center and my second shot was left red. And that's because I closed the incorrect eye. So at 5 yards, if a yellow versus red is what happens, just think when you get to 10 yards, 15 yards, 20 yards, how much further off you're gonna be if you close the wrong eye. In my beginner classes, we shoot anywhere between 10 to 15 yards to get started. Those archers that close the wrong eye when they're aiming, they always tend to shoot in the black, white, or even off the target. They have to go look for their arrows. So it will make a big difference the further back you move if you're using the wrong eye when you're shooting. You can also go off to the left of the target if you're canting your bow. You pull back and you're standing up nice and straight, and then you start canting the bow off to the side. There's a better chance that your arrow is gonna go off to that side as well. So make sure when you pull back, make sure that that limb tip is straight up, just like your head is straight up and down. And release, come straight back, and everything should go nice and straight to the target. Another reason why you might get an arrow that's going off to the left is torquing the bow. Torquing is when you have your hand in the grip position and there's extra movement there at the end. You grip onto the bow and you're holding onto it. You want to make sure everything is nice and relaxed the whole shot. So it should look like this. Okay, so nice and relaxed. You're going to hold on to it just a little bit because you don't want the bow to fall out of your hand. But when you're torquing the bow or you're gripping too tight to the bow, it's gonna look something like this, and this will create left shots for you. Okay, that holding on to it. Okay, just the extra movement in the hand, that's gonna create left and right shots. So make sure that you have a good grip position. You're gonna have your index finger and your thumb holding on. The other finger's gonna be nice and relaxed. You're gonna push in with the meaty part of the palm. And as you release, everything's just gonna relax here. You can hold on with the index finger and the thumb. Okay, so that way the bow isn't falling out of your hand. But instead of this, gripping onto the bow or holding onto it, when the arrow comes off the string, it's just gonna be nice and relaxed. When you shoot, you wanna make sure that you're always gonna line the string up with the same spot on your riser each time. If you are new to archery and you don't know anything about string alignment, what can happen is when you pull back and you're aiming, your string could be over here, your string could be lining up with the center of the riser, next shot it could be way over here. And so that is gonna change how your arrow is pointing down range, okay? Same thing, if your head's tilting over on one shot and then you're out here on one shot, if you're looking straight down, everything is going to move where that arrow is flying. When you pull back, if this string is over here one shot, and then the next shot, your string's in the middle, the next shot your string is way over here. You see how that's turning the bow? See where the string is lining up? Make sure it lines up in the same spot every time. Because if you change it, it's changing where your arrow is aiming, and that can give you those left shots. Another reason why arrows will go off to the left of the target is something we call peeking. Peeking happens when you shoot your shot and the archer is peeking to see where the arrow hit on the target. In archery, you want to keep everything in a straight line, and you have to wait until the arrow hits the target before you let down. But archers get too excited, they want to see where the arrow hits on the target, so I see this happen instead. They set up, they pull back, it looks great. And then they move their hand out of the way so they can peek to see where the arrow hit on the target. Anything that your hand does up here, there's a better chance that's what's going to happen to the arrow downrange. So make sure when you're shooting, no peeking. When you shoot right shots, you can also be peeking and make your arrows go off to the right. So we talked about this with your left shots. When you peek on a left shot, it's typically because you're coming out here to look. Well, they can also go to the right side if your arm moves this way to peek for the arrow, to see where the arrow is going to hit on the target. So as you pull back, you line up, you're ready to shoot, and you move your hand over to see where did your arrow hit. All right, so let's try that one more time. It's going to look like this. If you're peeking and your arrows go to the right, and you push your hand over, and wherever your hand's going, that's probably where your arrow is going to hit. Another reason for right hand shots, plucking the string. Plucking happens instead of having a nice smooth release where your fingers just kind of glide off the string, your hand's coming out here, you're plucking your fingers off the string. Now sometimes that happens because beginner archers will grip on too tight. So if they're on too tight, when you go to release your shot, it's hard for it to slide off. There's so much time for it to actually slide off that it looks like this, instead of if you're on the tips of your fingers in that first joint line, it just slips on nice and smooth. Or as a kid, when I grew up shooting, I used to pluck all the time. So we'll see if I can bring my old bad habits back. So I'm gonna do more of a tighter hook position here. All right. Okay, see how my hand came out like this? And that's because it takes me all that effort just to get my fingers off the string. So you want it to look like this. I'm gonna be a little bit lower on those fingertips. Okay, nice and smooth off the string, as opposed to hard to line up too. Okay, trying to get your fingers off the string. So no plucking in archery. You can also get right shots when you're canting your bow. If you're standing straight up and down as an archer and you pull back and your bow is tilted this way, as you pull back the string, you can see that the first shot I had is right here in the 10. It's a little bit high because I'm shooting so close right now, but it's in the 10. And my second two shots are off to the right in the 9 and the 8 ring. Now, just think if I were to actually be at 10 yards, 15 yards, or 20 yards, that's going to be a lot bigger of a difference than just an inner yellow to an outer yellow. You're going to maybe even be in the blue or black ring, depending on how far back you are. So canting is really important in archery. Make sure that limb tip stays straight up and down when you're pulling your bow back. The biggest reasons I see arrows going off to the right side for beginner archers is the soft shot. The soft shot happens when you don't get enough power, you don't get that full follow through in your shot, and I see this happen. The beginner archer will set up, they come back, they anchor, and they just open their hands or they come out just a little bit, but they don't get that power. That lack of power makes the arrows go off to the right side of the target. And this is as a right-handed archer. You want to make sure when you set up, you get set in tight, 1,000, 2 1,000, come straight back on the shot. I hope that today you found some cool little tips, cool little tricks of reasons why your arrows might be going where they're going when they hit the target. And the next time you're out at the archery range, you perfect those shots and you eliminate all those extra arrows that are going outside your perfect groups. Hope you have a great day. Happy shooting.